Imagine this. 12,000 years ago, a plant that looked like nothing more than wild grass grows out of the earth. No one knew that this small leaf would go on to reshape civilizations, spark wars, and eventually take millions of lives. This is the story of smoke. This is the story of how smoking was born when humans first started smoking. Our story begins about 12,300 years ago in a desert in what is now Utah, USA. There, ancient hunter-gatherer communities lived at a site archaeologists now call Wishbone. They left behind charred seeds near their hearths, and when modern scientists examined them, they discovered these weren't just any seeds. They were wild tobacco seeds. This is currently the oldest known evidence of humans using tobacco, thousands of years older than anyone had previously thought. But here's the real question. How did early humans even come up with the idea of burning this plant and breathing in its smoke? Most historians believe it started when people noticed that certain plants burning in wildfires released a strange aroma and a mild, mind-altering effect. From there, people slowly began burning this plant on purpose, first for rituals, then for healing. By around 5000 BC, in the Andes mountains of Peru and Ecuador in South America, shamans were using tobacco and other psychoactive plants in their spiritual rituals. They believed the smoke connected them to the spirit world, as if it carried their prayers up into the sky. Next comes the Maya civilization. Around 470 AD, in Mexico and Central America, the Maya had already immortalized tobacco on their temple walls. At a site called Palenque, archaeologists found an ancient carving of a Maya priest smoking a tube wrapped in leaves, essentially the world's first cigar-like object. For them, this wasn't just a habit, it was a way to connect with the gods. Between 470 and 630 AD, as the Maya migrated northward toward the Mississippi Valley, they carried this ritual with them. Slowly, the practice spread across North America. By 800 AD, tribes in the Pacific Northwest were smoking tobacco through their own distinct pipes. Now comes the turning point where this story becomes the world's story. The year was 1492. Christopher Columbus arrived in the Americas, and the native people gifted him dried tobacco leaves. Two of his crew members, Rodrigo de Jerez and Luis de Torres, became the first Europeans to witness human smoking. Rodrigo was so fascinated that he started smoking himself once he returned to Spain. But his neighbors were so terrified seeing smoke pour from his mouth and nose that they reported him to the Holy Inquisition, and the poor man spent nearly 7 years in prison simply for exhaling smoke. But despite the fear, the habit didn't stop. Portuguese sailors began growing tobacco at nearly all their trading posts by the late 15th century. Within just 70 years, barely 7 decades after Columbus, tobacco had reached every inhabited continent on Earth: Europe, Russia, the Ottoman Empire, China, Japan, and Africa. Few things in human history have ever spread this fast. For centuries, tobacco stayed limited to hand-rolled cigars and pipes. Then came the Industrial Revolution. After the Reconstruction era in the United States, new farming and manufacturing machines made cigarette production so easy that it reached every social class, rich and poor alike. What was once a sacred temple ritual had become a factory product. By the early 20th century, the cigarette wasn't just a habit anymore. It was an identity. Movie stars, soldiers, everyday people. Smoke rising from cigarettes in every hand. Advertisements were everywhere. No one imagined what was hiding behind all that so-called sophistication. Then in 1929, a German scientist named Fritz Lickent published the first formal statistical evidence linking cigarettes to lung cancer, but the world largely ignored it for decades. It wasn't until the 1954 British doctor study and the 1964 US Surgeon General's report that the truth finally broke through. The cigarette wasn't just a pleasure, it was a silent killer. After this revelation, a long battle began between tobacco companies and governments. It finally culminated in 1998 with the largest civil settlement in U.S. history, the Tobacco Master Settlement Agreement, forcing tobacco companies to take responsibility for the damage they had caused. And today, the very same plant that once connected Andean shamans to the spirit world is now taking millions of lives every single year, all around the globe. Something that began with a single spark has become one of the greatest health catastrophes in human history. So next time you see someone light up a cigarette, remember, this story is 12,000 years old. One small leaf changed the course of human history. If you enjoyed this story, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments which historical story should we uncover next.